themselves. Now let's talk about climate change and the predictions the scientists have made over the years. The Epoch Times, they put out a list of failed predictions going back like 80 years. And these are all the newspaper headlines. In the beginning, in 1939, they were talking about an Arctic meltdown. All the glaciers in eastern Greenland are rapidly melting. This came out of the Harrisburg Sunday Courier. This was reported on December 17, 1939. Have they all melted? No. This is from 1952. The glaciers of Norway and Alaska are only half the size they were 50 years ago. This was an Arctic expert, and they're going to continually shrink. Have they? Once again, no. Then we had the population bomb, and we had Ehrlich, a Stanford University biologist and author of The Population Bomb, proposed lacing staple foods and drinking water with sterilizing agents to cut the growing population of the United States. Ehrlich was on fire by 1970, getting 24 speaking requests per day and predicting that America would be rationing water by 1974 and food by 1980. Did that happen? No, once again, it did not. Then we move into global cooling. This was 1970. Scientists predict a new ice age by the 21st century. This came out of the Boston Globe, reported on April 16, 1970. Did it happen? No. In 1972, the Brown University geologist wrote a letter to President Richard Nixon reporting that a conference attended by 42 top American and European investigators concluded a global deterioration of climate by order of magnitude larger than any hitherto experienced by civilized mankind is a very real possibility and indeed may be due very soon. Actually, we haven't experienced any of that. By 1975, the writing was on the wall, with major publications including the Washington Post, The Guardian, Time magazine running their own stories on the predictions of the coming ice age. So in the 70s, we had the ice age. And then we fast forward to the 80s, late 80s, 90s, everything started to switch to global warming. So one of the articles that came out in 88 was the small nation of Maldives was threatened to be completely covered by a gradual rise in average sea level. That was reported in 1988, noting that the end of the Maldives and its people could come sooner if drinking water supplies dry up by 92. Did it happen? No. Actually, 31 years later, that island is thriving. The population has doubled since the 80s. And guess what? The oceans, they didn't rise. Now, I remember when I was in school, they were telling us, when these icebergs break off and everything starts to melt, the sea level will rise. Well, that's not true. Take an ice cube, put it in a glass of water, fill it to the top, watch the ice cube melt. Let me know if your water overflows from the glass. It will not. Because remember, ice expands, it melts, it contracts. And basically you have the same amount in there that you had before. So when an iceberg does this, the seas don't rise. This is why we haven't been seeing any of this. This is why California didn't fall into the ocean. And Greenland, their climate research center, reported plenty of ice in the Arctic in August of 2019. And remember, there were individuals that were traveling to the Arctic and they got stuck in ice. The climate is always changing. It has nothing to do with man. This has happened way before man. And the climate will continue to change, just like it has always done. And this is why their predictions never pan out. I mean, they always push it out. Well, it's going to be 10 years from now. Oh, it's going to be... And when we hit it, they push it out again another 10 years. And if the climate's changing, because it does change, they say, okay, now we're going to go into an ice age. Oh, now we're going to be global warming. Oh, now we're going to go back into the ice age. And that's what they do. And as you can see, going back in time, if they can't predict any of this, how in the world are they still predicting anything into the future? They can't. Because they've been wrong all this